Hey guys, it's Pass here from It's All About the Grey podcast. I just wanted to take 20 seconds of your time before we get into today's show. We had Kate O'Hara on, the CEO of Foodbank, to discuss the importance of Foodbank and the role they play here, not only in WA, but in Australia as a country. Kate advised that one family in every street in Australia is struggling to make ends meet. If there's anything that you can do to help either Foodbank, whether it be with your time or some form of donation, or potentially even a property for them to continue to help combat this crisis, please feel free to reach out to It's All About the Grey podcast and we'll look to put you in touch. I hope you enjoy the show. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good wherever you are. Welcome to It's All About the Grey podcast. I've been fortunate enough to get Kate on this morning as the CEO of Foodbank to tell us a bit about Kate's journey, how she's come to be the CEO of Foodbank, and what the driving forces hopefully are about running and operating a not-for-profit. So, Kate, thank you so much for coming on this morning.
Oh, thank you, Paz, for thinking of us and introducing us to the whole It's all about the grey. So now I'm informed. It's a part of the set of listening for me too.
Amazing. Awesome. And hopefully this will be the first of many different podcasts that you can look to get on. Have you been on many podcasts before, Kate?
A couple.
A couple.
So, yeah, it's a wonderful channel and great reference, particularly if you do driving or, long walks, that sort of stuff. It's great to have a podcast in the ears.
Good.
While you're out and about.
Yes, agreed. And hopefully this will be good listening for those that tune in. I know it's always something that I've been interested in how obviously the NFP space works. And as we said earlier, you're still running a business, except for the fact that you're not running a profitable business per se. And it's more driven around margins. So the driving forces for most businesses is turn a profit, whereas for a not-for-profit, it's not necessarily that. Is that a fair comment?
We like to reference more for-purpose organisation. So we do have to make a margin for sustainability. We can't be lurching from one funding pool to another funding pool. That's not actually fair on those we're here to serve, as well as those that work for us or are in our network of supply. It's really important, long-term stability in the not-for-profit space. Prior to being in this space, when I was in the corporate world, it was always important to look at the partners that we would work with and support, that they had financial stability and a stable team. Because without that, you'd be putting money into something that might, in a couple of years, not be operating. So where's the value? So for purpose is the preferred. And we do strive, and I know most of my colleagues in this sector do strive to have a margin for long-term financial sustainability. Plenty of them also have long-term investments or endowments.
Yeah, good. Okay, so before we dive into probably a bit more about you, I just want to touch on that for purpose. Obviously, as a charity, it has a purpose, and as an individual, you have a purpose. Do you find that I guess they're somewhat aligned, and that's why you're working with Foodbank or in the NFP space?
Well, I think you have to align, anyone has to align their personal values with the organisation they're working for. And this is a great fit for me. I love to be in an organisation that's professional, that's accountable, that's transparent. But doing good has been something that was part of my professional career for the last, really, since I left advertising and went into property to building was very much about what are we doing for community in return. It was just the 80s and the ad game. It was less about that. But advertising's a bit like that in that day. So it's always been an aligned issue, and I think you get your best out of people when their values align with the organisation.
Okay, great. It's definitely something that we speak about a fair bit in the podcast and particularly in the office, that, why are you here? What do you actually want to get out of coming to work every day? Because, coming back to, as the organisation is for purpose, I'd like to think even in normal business, we are for purpose too. There's a purpose as to why we exist.
Yep.
And hopefully we fulfil that purpose every day. So amazing. Great. So Kate, tell us your story. How have you come to be to the position you are today? Because as we said earlier, it's not about all the good stories. There's some shaping moments throughout careers. So, run us through.
I'll try not to be too dull. It started in the advertising industry sector, in direct marketing, back in the 80s. And in the day it was a bit, and you might be too young to know this, Paz, but a bit Netsky knives.
Okay.
And there was Demtel and all that sort of thing. And direct marketing was emerging as a sector for the communications industry here. And I ended up landing into that space within a subsidiary at Market Force, which is still around today.
Yep.
And it was the biggest agency in the day and at the time. So that was a wonderful space to get into first, because that was really driving into issues of accountability as well with databases. And that's maintained an importance in my professional career the whole way. And advertising was wonderful. It was really good to me. It took me to Singapore for some 5 years, where I started a family, and then came back to have the first child and stayed in the advertising game, and ended up forming a business with some girlfriends. Again, that business has been going up till today as a small marketing consultancy, and then ended up within the property company Hawaiian. And over the years, it was some 20 years from being in the marketing role through to being on the board. So ongoing evolution inside Hawaiian. And then I had a great opportunity to go east to the building industry. And of course, COVID hit. So of course, I picked Melbourne as the town to go and live in. Worst place on the planet for COVID. And lived barely through that period of time. And this opportunity came up to come into Foodbank WA. What had been the appeal for me is in the property group at Hawaiian, we had been a partner of Foodbank. And I'd been very much in the space of not just communications, but the community investment strategies of the business from the beginning. And that investment back into the people that you serve was very aligned to what Foodbank's about. And having started in my teens in retail, there was a lot of things that just ticked the boxes for me. We found that the early discussions on talking about Foodbank, which when I was first approached, I said, oh, a for-purpose organisation, dare I say not for profit. But once I understood the bigger picture of it, it was a really wonderful opportunity to be presented with, and I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Amazing. So retail, marketing, building, and then now into for-purpose. Obviously, it's fair to say your leadership skills have adapted through that time, Kate. So how did you find managing particular people in all these different organisations, and how has that allowed you now to take the steps you've taken into the CEO role?
There's been really big influences in my life that have helped me determine what's my leadership style. And I started off in an organisation as the direct marketing subsidiary of Market Force with a gentleman called Jim Murphy, and he is still very much involved in the Perth business community, and very much taught me about how to have a good time whilst delivering professional work, and the importance of networking and connecting with people, a phenomenal influence. I then was lucky enough to find a role in Singapore and worked with Daily Naidu Chan agency over in Singapore. Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting to see the approach to work in the Singaporean community. And this is before Singapore had Boat Quay. I'm sure lots of your listeners know Boat Quay. So I watched that emerge out of the river and the soil. And we had lots of challenges over there. And the lesson out of that space, I suppose, was very much do what you got to do to keep the business going. Mm-hmm. So at one stage, we actually, as a whole of staff in that agency, decided to work on a Saturday, because we were given the option of we either cut jobs and you'll lose some colleagues, or we work on Saturdays and get more work done so we can get the billings to where they needed to be. Right. And we all voted to work on the Saturday. So we just decided to do what we would do. But, I very much learnt there, if you work hard, you play hard. Mm-hmm. Lots of good times in Singapore. And then when I came back, I was lucky enough to work with the Shorter Group, and Deborah and Bruce Shorter were phenomenal impacts in my life, in not just the leadership approach, but also working on business strategy. And that organisation went through lots and lots of change, and being aware, really fine-tuning aware of the impact of managing financials closely was really important in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I went to the small business environment with Intersect Marketing, with Mara Siciliano and Kyla Milne, great mates still. And that business was, the three of us just said, we're sick of what we're doing with other places, let's work together. And that has been, over 20 years now. So it's been phenomenal with that to learn all the detail of managing a business. And we quickly worked out that, one of us would be on the numbers and the books, and one of us would be on new business and network, and one of us would be on operational excellence. So identifying the people you work with and the skill set you work with was the lesson in that. And then when I went into Hawaiian, it was the corporate. It was really picking up on the governance, and I still catch up with all the time, Russell Gibbs, and a great influence in life. And that journey in there was lots of change and lots of personal growth, lots of world travel, lots of learnings through that journey, and lots of personal development. They supported me in lots of training. So I was very fortunate with all those years there. And so the move to the East Coast was really about broadening horizons and working with national scale budgets, working with national scale strategies, all of which has come to play in the role I've got today at Foodbank, and keeping to the principles of, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You got to have that culture absolutely in top of mind every day, all day. Strategy is never set and forget, but it comes after culture, and the people have got to be right. It's got to be the right team. But the strategy is what will drive the culture, and people understanding it and owning it and breathing it. And then the values. And not just having values on a wall, but values that you want people to actually demonstrate in behaviour, and looking for those behaviours and talking about those behaviours. And it's the little things in that. It's the way in which people engage in the office or when they're working remote. It's the way in which you start and manage your meetings. It's every aspect. The values have got to be seen and evidenced in behaviour.
Yeah, I think Kate, you've touched on some fantastic points. I couldn't agree more that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think that's a good way to put it. But your ability to engage with people will ultimately also drive the culture as the leader. And more often than not, everyone has these fantastic strategy sessions where they bring in these consultants, but if they're not living it, then no one else is going to live it. And I think you've had that approach where you've seen that really work in Singapore, where arguably there must have been some form of common ground or culture within the office that said, you know what, we're going to be resilient here.
Yep.
We're going to push through this issue. We're going to work on that Saturday. And regardless of what happens, we're going to get through. And I feel personally that in modern day businesses, it is starting to come back, but it was gone for a long time. And maybe that's because of the cyclical pattern of the labour force, that people now realise the importance of listening, because you don't have this infinite labour force there available. But in modern day business, it is critical. And it's good to see how you've been able to evolve through all the organisations, both at a small to a national strategy, and how you've picked something from all of them.
Yes. And I treat it as a bit of a big soup pot. I treat my subconscious as a pot of knowledge, pour enough into it, and then when you've got something to deal with, your front consciousness will pull it out, and you'll find the right solution. But keep putting stuff into the big soup pot, and then you'll be able to deal with whatever comes as an issue to deal with on the day. So always learning, always listening, always asking, can I do it better? What did I stuff up there? Because we do,
Of course.
We stuff up, we're human. And owning it is important, but picking it all and putting it into the pot.
Yeah, I like it. The soup pot.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The cauldron, someone
the
once
cauldron.
said to me.
Okay.
It's the cauldron. I'm like, that sounds a bit dark.
Yes, it does. I think the soup pot. We'll run with that.
Yeah.
I like it. The soup pot. Keep pouring in until you're ready, arguably, to dish it out.
Yeah, and you do. You'll face. I find I face a discussion or a situation or a problem, and you just give yourself a little bit of space, and your subconscious has usually got it. You just got to let it bubble forth.
Yeah. Okay. So again, subconscious is something, or trust your gut, or however different people say it. As a leader, how critical is it, Kate? And how often do you find yourself going, just listen to my gut, or I knew it. You know what I mean?
I still think I need to listen more to my gut.
Okay.
I like the pragmatic approach. I like to. People always hear me say, "All right, everybody, just let's put a cold towel on heads, calm down, take a moment, and we'll come back to this." So I like the pragmatic approach, but sometimes you just know in your gut, and I still need to listen to it a bit more, whether it's over a decision for expansion, or it's a people issue, or it's a change in pricing or product strategy. Yeah, you got to listen to your gut and trust that you've been observing enough and listening enough to be able to make the right call. So, yeah, I still need to do a bit more of it. I try to do as best, but sometimes really pragmatic solutions, they all come with a bias.
Of course.
So.
Of course, and I think that shapes leadership styles as well.
Yeah.
Is that you'll often find that they're what I personally call authentic leaders.
Yeah, absolutely, absolute believer in the authentic leadership model. Probably less so the servant model, but authenticity means you are there for service.
Yeah.
So.
Amazing. Okay, well, that was some great insight, Kate, and you've obviously been on an absolute journey, and it probably has given you a lot of tools to be able to lead forward where you are today. So let's delve more into the for-purpose aspect of the charity world, I guess. As I said, we haven't had anyone on the podcast as of yet to talk about how the business in effect operates, because it really is still a business.
Absolutely.
And it'd be interesting just to understand, what's the day in the life of a CEO of a for-purpose company, and how does that work with your staff and national presence and everything else that comes to it?
Yeah. So like any CEO, I've got an executive, I've got a key leadership team that have a program of work in progress meetings, some weekly, some fortnightly, it depends. And we have very good systems to provide the data. I'm looking at our data on numbers of invoices handled the previous day, numbers of kilos moved, and numbers of classes delivered through nutrition education. So the dashboards and numbers are really important, and understanding those and asking questions about those, but of every level of staff. So I'll go past the front counters or into the shop floor, or chat with the nutrition team about, so what have you seen? Why we had 1,003 people through our system last Thursday. Now that's ridiculous. That is seriously ridiculous in September to have that many people go through. But that meant, right, I've got to go and find out why. Yeah. So start asking questions. What are we seeing? What's coming in, etc. So that liaison with the executive is a daily. Then the interaction with the rest of the team. I try to keep it a bit sporadic and surprise and delight. I call it surprise and delight. And stop at someone's desk, or go out and see someone on the floor, or dig a little bit deeper into something. And when I first started doing that, wherever I've been, some of the other teams sort of go, ooh, she's talking to so-and-so. And it's like, that's a good thing. I'm allowed to talk to anyone, So I do like to surprise and delight and ask unexpected questions of people to add to the depth of understanding. And then obviously there's liaison with the board and my chair. I keep in close contact with the chair, so we chat at least once a week on items, so I can flag or ask, and board members. I have great board in that I've got experts in certain areas, so I can check in with them, whether it's on a supply, it's on a work health and safety, it's on a government relations, it's on a overall governance of the organisation issue, so depending on what we're dealing with. So I do interact with them a lot. On a national level for Foodbank, I liaise with the Foodbank Australia CEO at least weekly, and that's about the fact that a lot of our food supply comes in from east, and a lot of our federal government relations and media relations is important to us. I see the government, even though we don't get that much funding from them, it's a critical part of the food system, and food relief is a part of the overall food system. So there's lots I think government can do there, and that's why I like to stay across what's changing. So I watch this stuff with Woolies and Coles at the moment really closely, and I check in with my federal team counterparts on that regularly, and they do a lot of research nationally, which helps justify what we do and evidence what we do. So the federal liaison with the federal food bank team is quite a lot. And then, of course, there's all the agencies. We've got 400 plus agencies. The whole welfare sector is really important to us. And these last few weeks, my life's been absorbed by Anti-Poverty Week and prepping up with that. So I'm dealing with, WACOS and Anglicare, Uniting. We're all there to help those that are dealing with hardship. And we know our lane. We stick to our lane. But when we can bring the sector together, I think that's really critical as part of how our sector needs to change and keep becoming more effective in what we do. Because it's not about what we do, it's about who we help. So, yeah, it's a whole mix. It's full stakeholder engagement. My poor colleague that manages my life, she's often saying, like, you do know there's travel time in between. I say, no, it's okay. I'll ring them from the car. So, I try and milk a good 27 hours out of a 10-hour working day. It's just because we need to do the right thing.
Correct. Efficiency as a CEO is critical, and I think every CEO, obviously you probably more than most, is time poor.
Yeah. Just like you would be.
Yeah.
There's never enough hours in the day.
Never. But wow, I wouldn't have had a clue. I didn't realise there'd be so much involvement with the board on a daily. I would have thought it's rather more a bi-weekly or monthly, but it appears that you're speaking at least with either the chair or one of the board members almost every day as well to get insight.
Well, probably at least once a week.
Yeah, okay.
And that's because it's a well-constructed board of experts in areas. So if we're dealing with some work health and safety issues, or I can turn to one of the board members. If I'm dealing with government relations, I can turn to one of the board members.
Right.
If I'm dealing with financial issues, I can turn to one of the board members. And I do use those. We have nutrition issues that pop up. So, yeah, it'd be at least weekly that I'm speaking to a board member, sometimes two of them in a week.
Okay, wow. So coming back to some of the points you raised, Kate, we spoke about 1,003 people through the system last Thursday. You touched on the issues of Coles and Woolworths at the moment with this pricing. I'll leave it at pricing issue. I don't want to delve into it too much.
Yep, we might just head down that rabbit hole for a long time.
Yeah, I know. We could sit and do a whole show on it. How do you see this cost of living crisis really impacting families? Because arguably you're almost at the coalface where you're seeing... We are. Yeah.
We're the front line, without question. The first variable people can turn down in their household budget is food. And that's the biggest message that we're trying to get across to everyone all the time, and have been for about 18 months, and trying to help all the stakeholders understand once somebody in Western Australia loses their house because their budget's screwed, there's no going back because there's no house to go to. And even the caravans are running out, and camping in tent land is not good, and there is no other alternate housing. So that gap is so critical. If a household can shuffle a budget and take what might be for them a $400 or $500 food bill down to $100, it means that they can put more into their mortgage or rent, and then they can keep their home. So you've got to keep people in housing. We are the first line in which you can turn that cost down. Someone could call this morning and have a referral from one of our partners within the hour and be in our branch buying food within 2 hours. And no one needs to know that they've come to our service. They can turn up with Coles and Woolies and Aldi's and whatever shopping bags, fill what they buy up, and go home, and no one will necessarily be the wiser. But it does mean that if you're used to eating a certain brand of chicken breast or a certain type of cereal, the household has to get a bit flexible. We are not a supermarket, we're food relief, so the food that's available is what we have available. It is more comprehensive now than it's ever been. We have pet food, we have nappies, we have household cleaning products, personal hygiene products. So if you're flexible around the brands and the type of foods and you become creative with what you're willing to make, and you learn how to really minimise your waste. Household waste is a massive issue in Australia. Then you can actually manage your food costs down significantly, and then you can keep your house. But what we're seeing, sadly, is it's households with incomes that are coming to us, and that is the biggest growing number. In a week, we'll have the annual hunger report.
Okay.
And that will show the data up to July for the 12 months prior to July of what is happening in Australia. And we'll get it Australia-wide and state by state. So I'll get the WA data. Last year, WA was worse in a couple of areas than the other states. And that was absolutely surprising. We did surveys of our card holders 3-4 months ago, and it showed that nearly 40% had a tertiary degree.
That's insane.
Oh, you should see the people that come to the counters at all our branches and they're like, I should not be here. I am never expected to be here. They burst into tears, as you would, because you've at last had the courage to come forward and say, I have a job, but I have to care for this, or I've had a health issue come up, or I didn't expect to deal with this massive car issue that's come up, or a dental or whatever. And then they don't have the $5,000 or the $10,000 or the $20,000 to be able to deal with that issue. So if people can get through their issue, we're seeing a lot of people are short-term card holders, get through the bump, keep the house. That's the big message. But, it's really sad when you do hear stories about retail manager, full-time, wife, 3 days a week, teachers, teaching, and they can't make ends meet, They don't want to leave their middle suburbia, school, house, and all the expectations on life that they face. But if they don't change something, they won't be able to support the kids doing another sport or won't be able to stay in that suburb. And it's been those areas that has been more surprising. So the cars in our car park, they're of a higher grade. But too often you'll see that, particularly with the SUVs, someone's living in it.
Wow.
Yeah, might be a nice SUV, but they're living in it.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That is fascinating because my understanding is WA has the highest earning income out of all the states.
Yep, resource sector. You look at the Pilbara, that is the engine room of the nation. The financial contribution that the Pilbara puts to the federal and state governments is exactly why Jim Chalmers has a surplus, is exactly why this state has a surplus. And that sector has produced a very strange, we don't have a normal curve anymore, the flat up, down.
Yes.
We have a curve in which the rich are getting richer and the poor are eating into the middle class.
Yes.
So that's the truth of it. That's the front line every single agency I speak to talks about.
I agree. And I actually, in my opinion, I think you've probably said it yourself, it is masking what is really happening, not only just in WA, but arguably throughout Australia.
Yep.
And I can tell you right now, a lot of the businesses that are starting to come through our doors with JBC, the distressed arm of CF Financial Group, is through the roof.
Yeah.
We're talking 4 or 5 distressed businesses sometimes a day.
Oh, wow.
That are coming in going, I can't pay my rent. I can't pay my wages tomorrow. I haven't paid myself out the business for the last 9 months.
Yeah.
And it's a real thing.
It's absolutely real. And the cost of doing business is so different to 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
The changed legislation, state and federally, has led to such an impost, and you would absolutely get this. I spoke to a couple of industry groups. One was a legal group, and basically said to them, if you've got any staff on $70,000 or less, you need to ask them if they're okay.
Wow.
Because if they're trying to run a 4-person household with kids in school, they're not coping, even if their partner is doing a couple of days a week. And I happened to see that senior partner in that law firm again some months later, and he actually thanked me for raising that issue, because 3 of his staff, very good staff in his team, were about to leave because life happened. And thankfully he found out about it. One needed some support with a massive car issue. One was facing an increase in rent they couldn't afford and they needed to move. And life had happened on a health issue for the third. So their firm was able to financially gift them the few dollars they needed to get over that hump, and he kept the staff. Now, you know what it's like to recruit and find a new staff member and then get them trained and the downtime.
Correct.
So, who would have ever thought someone with a $70,000 income and a supplementary with their partner wouldn't be able to cope?
It's crazy.
It's the truth.
It is, and I think hopefully through through like yourself and Foodbank, they have that ability to share the message.
Yep.
At a federal level. There's this big debate at the moment. Again, we're delving into politics, but this GST. Oh, well, WA this, and WA should get its fair. What do you mean? Do you know what I mean? This is something that has been entrenched in arguably into the Constitution and to the Australian tax system forever.
Yep.
It is not some new tax, and the distribution methodology, the way they've built it, has been on the same way for so long. And now they're going, oh, well, WA's in this surplus, the eastern states, to this, to that. What about us?
Yeah.
You know what? You think this mining boom isn't going to collapse? If only we could measure how much of an impact on household income it had, or how much of income impact it's having on small businesses.
Absolutely.
Because we are doing it tough here, as is the East Coast right now.
Yep.
But let's all not look at just, ripping from Peter to pay Paul. We're all in this together.
Yep.
And that's probably back to Foodbank, right? For purpose, we're in this together. Don't be ashamed. Come in. We're here to help, right?
Absolutely. And if it's a couple of times and it just helps you through the hump, that's great. But it's important, and there's a huge barrier for people with dignity issues about coming forward. So we have 30-odd branches, 30-odd mobile locations we go to through the week in the metro, and across the country branches we go out to another 30-odd locations, 6 branches out of which we operate. Obviously the full ranges in the branches, but really just save your house. That's seriously, do not lose your house. There's nowhere to go.
And then you've got people screaming that they just can't buy a house.
Absolutely.
Let's
go there.
Hey!
I used to work in the building sector and property games, so oh my gosh, we saw this coming years ago.
Yeah, it's been predicted for a long time.
Absolutely.
So how are we going to get out of it?
Well,
let's solve the world's problems, Kate. How are we getting out of this?
Yeah. Well, to build homes needs people to build them, and I'm probably stretching it too far, but our infrastructure investment has taken a lot of resources, people-wise and materials, etc., into a space that infrastructure is needed. It's just about when do you play the piece on the chessboard, and the piece that needs to be played now is homes, and it's not just materials and the people. So what could we be doing to get those resources into the sector of housing? But it's that approvals process and the working together across government, so that in EPAs and planning and all of them need to stand in the shoes of those they're trying to serve. And that's what I say all the time. If you can't find the solution for what you're doing, go and spend a week in the shoes of those you're trying to serve. And do you know what? You'll get an answer pretty quick. Pretty quick.
I like that. It's almost, and this is probably the wrong spin to put on it, but I think there's a show called Undercover Boss or something.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if that's still around, but I've seen it pop up a few times recently. Yeah. And they go to McDonald's or Burger King or whatever, the CEO, and he just lives the life. And I think you're right. I think, and again, you know, let's not get into politics, but how many of those politicians have been in the shoes of these people that can't buy a house?
Absolutely.
And you know, when the median house price in Perth's gone from 500,000 to it's just surpassed Melbourne now, so it's now cheaper to buy a house in Melbourne on the median than it is in Perth.
It's ridiculous.
It is just ridiculous. What are we as a state doing about it, and what is the federal government going to do about it? Because we just can't just continue to go, oh, that's all right. The richer will get richer and the poorer will get poorer. Or
the middle class will become poorer.
Exactly right. It's a big issue. Oh, wow. Yeah, we could sit here.
Yeah.
We could sit here forever, Kate. So in closing, what's the future of Foodbank? Where do you see the organisation getting to? What do you want to do for the organisation? How can the listeners help? How can we help? Like, maybe let's start with, obviously, Foodbank is a for purpose. And arguably, and this is my opinion, we almost don't want that organisation to exist because we don't want...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The happiest day would be the day we can close the whole business down because it's not needed.
Not needed, yeah.
Sadly, I don't think I'll be alive when that happens. But, yeah, the ideal is we're not needed. But we are needed. So our 4-year vision is healthy food for all people.
Okay.
It's a basic human right. And it is. And particularly with the production volumes we have in this state, no one in WA should be without good food, healthy food. And there's 1,000 variables that impact it. And I love when you speak to the East Coast and understanding WA, because every time I show someone from the East Coast an aerial of a town like Walloona, and they go, whoa, that looks like Mars. That's WA, you know, and logistics here is absolutely insane to move things around. And most of the East Coast don't get it. Some Queenslanders are on our side. Very good. So we need to get healthy food to all people, and we only go as far north as Geraldton.
Okay.
So we do want to go into the Pilbara and Kimberley, and we do want to be much more effective in our logistics of moving that food. There's food in Carnarvon, for example, that during tomato season we get reported 20 tonne of tomatoes gets ground back into the earth.
Wow.
Now that's insane.
That is
and
insane.
It's not just those types of produce, it's happening everywhere. We'd love to be in Carnarvon as a food collection hub and working with partners for distribution. We'd love to have, we've mapped out 8 locations across the Pilbara and Kimberley that we'd love to have smaller hubs that would change distribution of food for relief, not just for the everyday but for natural disaster emergency. It would totally change that area. So we need to get food as a distribution as part of our feed strategy out. But the truth of what we need to do is empower people for their lives through education. And you'd be amazed at how many people do not know how to take some basic ingredients and make a really good meal. So our NOM program is something that we're actually talking to lots of groups and other food banks in the other states of Australia about taking NOM, our education program, across the country.
Okay.
And we've got that tailored for parents of 0 to 5, children in primary school, high school aged kids, youth, adults and all abilities. And we'd really love to wrap up the development of our Indigenous program. We've been doing quite a bit in that space, but we've got more to do. But it's about being able to guide people through an understanding that leads to behaviour change. And we know through lots of thorough detailed research over the last 17 years that our programs do lead to behaviour change. We had a shared story recently from a counsellor in one of our agency groups that one of her clients that she'd pretty much given up on, which was a new migrant and from Sri Lanka, had been going through a lot of issues and had some substance abuse issues. He did attend one of our adult education programs and did the program. Realised from that what he was doing in his consumption was absolutely destroying his life, and he needed to change that. By being able to reduce his consumption, he then realised he could do some other things to change life and move towards counselling. And his counsellor identified he's got PTSD because he was a Tamil tiger.
Wow.
And he's now on a path to becoming what he wants to be, which is, a father and contributing and having a full life. But it all started from recognising what he was doing with food and how he was consuming was being really, really detrimental, and it was just masking his PTSD.
Wow.
So, we are what we eat. We need to teach people, and that's every socioeconomic group. People need to understand how to eat well, that they don't need fancy ingredients. Bless, I love all these celebrities, but, do you really have to have those specific anchovies or whatever? You can make great food. And we'd like to get that across Australia, if not the world.
Amazing.
So, they're the things we want to do.
Well, keep doing what you're doing, Kate, because, if there weren't people like yourself leading these organisations to new lengths, they will, unfortunately, not be able to keep up because, and you'd know this, the statistics are that, poverty is continuing to grow and particularly now in this cost of living crisis. So, if there's anything that we can do, as a show or even as a firm, love to get involved. And to that point, if any of the listeners want to get involved, maybe Kate, you can probably tell us how we can help.
Well, the best first point, obviously, is always the website, so foodbank.org.au. But we're all about time, treasure, and talent. So it's great to get money, treasure. That's always great. And we've got 100 things we'd love to do. We need to move our Bunbury branch. We're absolutely bursting at the seams in Bunbury, and Bunbury collects food. So we're working really hard with the state government and the city of Bunbury on a new location, which is super exciting because they're a 20-year-old branch.
Wow.
And to get to a new facility would mean we can really do a lot more. And we would love to get north, to get into the Pilbara Kimberley. So there's always a great need for treasure. But time is critical for us because we don't operate without volleys. Our volunteers, some 200 regular volunteers, help us work every day. And then we have about 2,000 corporates that come through in the kitchens and the warehouses and the front counters. And without that 2,500 odd people, we wouldn't function. So we really need lots of volunteering time, and lots of companies now have, a day or two of volunteering in their rosters. And then the talent comes in when we do have projects like a Capital Works or a Move, because expertise from a project planning, or we've had people come in and their talent has been they've helped us with some development of digital apps. They've helped us with some event management.
Okay.
There's been some really interesting ways in which expertise can be applied to projects, and that talent has been invaluable to us. So time, treasure, talent is very important, and it's about starting a conversation and knowing what you're able to commit to, and we're really pragmatic about it. Whatever you can help with, if it's useful, etc. We'll be honest. We had a partner say to us, "Oh, we want to do this for you," and we said, "That's really good, but we can't get any food there. So sorry." So we don't say yes all the time.
Okay.
It's got to be on strategy and relevant to what we're here to do.
So time, treasure, talent.
Time, treasure,
If
talent.
you've got one or you can give one, reach out.
But the best thing is just spread the word.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you there's someone in every street in the state that's dealing with something that you would never know about. When they pull into the house and the garage door goes down, you just don't know what's going on. So it's demystifying and destigmatising what Foodbank and the other food relief providers do, and encouraging people, balance your budget. There are lots of ways to balance your budget. Balance it with food first, because it's the quickest. Don't say you don't talk to the bank and you don't talk to the utilities, but you do. But balance it with food. Keep your home. So help us get that word out and make sure everybody's able to keep their families together and their homes running, and we can prosper through and get past these current issues.
Well, Kate, I hope we can prosper through, and I truly hope that as an organisation, one day, whether it be in my lifetime or someone else's lifetime,
yours will be much longer than mine.
it will cease to exist. But unless you're out there spreading the word, and unless you've got people out there that are willing to help, we're never really going to combat this issue. So, arguably you're a hero in modern day society. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep taking the organisation to the next level. And as I said, if there's anything we can do, or any of the listeners that can help, please feel free to get on the website or to feel free to reach out to myself or Kate, and let's work together to combat this issue once and for all.
Yeah, and you know what? Working together, we can do it. Whether it's government, whether it's organisations, whether it's just people in a community. It's the collaboration that's the key.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's work together and let's do it. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you, Paz. And thank you to It's All About the Grey. It's wonderful to have these sorts of things running, and we'll keep spreading the word.
Yes,
get more listeners.
Will. Awesome. All right. Thank
Well
you
done.
all, and thanks for listening.